and welcome back to the Football Chuggu Podcast. It's just a bite-sized one today. We're just going to be reacting to the Scotland result. So I've got, I'm your co-host, Pearse McLaughlin. Tom Dunnan couldn't make it today due to family reasons. So I've got a very good substitution today, and Thomas McLaughlin. Hello, Thomas.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I hope that his family situation's well, and we can get him back to the podcast as soon as possible.
Yeah. That and obviously time zone differences can be an issue as well. 9 hours ahead, the UK, South Korea is at the moment, so it's just one of those things. But let's get into the game itself in terms of Scotland. Scotland defeated Denmark by 4 goals to 2 in the final World Cup qualifier for the World Cup 2026 this next summer. It's going to be held in Canada, US, and Mexico. So, Tommy, first off, I want to ask you about. I think we should, rather than talk about the game itself, I think we should talk about first. When you mentioned Steve Clarke and a job that he's done, because there was a stat going around that he's qualified for 3 out of 4 major tournaments in terms of 2 Euros back to back, and it was a World Cup, and then we lost the last World Cup playoff semi-final to Ukraine a couple of years ago, and now he's obviously the longest serving Scottish manager, and yeah, what's your thoughts on Steve Clarke?
Well, at the very beginning, I wasn't too sure because obviously the job that he's done has been fantastic on longevity wise. But at the very beginning, he did have a kind of shaky start. He wasn't really showing us really exciting football with Scotland, and he was slipping up in some big games. We could have qualified. I think the last tournament we could have qualified. We did very well on the lead up to the last 2 games, and then we totally choked it. But now this year, I think the way that his tactics and the players are gelling with him, the atmosphere in the changing room must be electric, because the way that they are playing right now is like prime Barcelona or like prime Real Madrid. It's like they've got something about them. They've got like an aura, especially some of the key players that are performing every week. I'll name some of the key players right now, that stand out to me is like Lewis Ferguson. We've got Scott McTominay, and even that Doak, even though he got a wee injury, they're playing as if they've got nothing to lose. They're just playing, they're doing expressive football, they're showing them what they're capable of, rather than back in the day, long balls over the top. We're actually playing good football. So I think he is the perfect manager that we've got right now, and I don't see anyone that could do the job that he's doing with Scotland.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you. I think the first thing he did to me is he brought the nation back together as a fan base. I think because we've had Harty before. I think after Gordon Strachan, I think there was a massive disconnect. I thought Gordon Strachan did well, but again, he was so near so far. And then I think when McLeish and stuff like that, and a couple of different managers, they didn't really, and the results were woeful. And we're giving out caps to a lot of players that probably didn't deserve caps. And then once he came in, he identified what he wanted to do, the style of play, and you can't go unnoticed what he did with Command. Got him into Europe, which is a club with a small budget, and what he's done with Scotland, which obviously we're not the most talented of nation, but one thing that Scotland are is never say die attitude. We're fighters, we're passionate, and we'll cover every bloody grass. And that's the epitome of what a Scottish man is. And that's what's been happening. And like you say, I think getting Scotland to World Cup for the first time since 1998. I was 2 years old, so I don't even remember the 1998. The first World Cup I remember was 2006. In terms of memories. So the fact that Scotland's going to be in a major a World Cup. World Cup for me it's like the Champions League. It's like the pinnacle. It's the dream of any young boy or girl growing up that they want to go and play and represent their country. And like you say, you mentioned some of the players there. I think we've got really good core players. I think the only area of weakness I would say is a natural goal scorer. Because I think since the days of like Kenny Dalglish, for example, and Dennis Law, I don't think we've had anyone of that caliber in a long time. But what we do have is a unit in terms of the togetherness of spirit. and we've got goals from all over the park. So it's not as if we're not scoring goals, just we don't have a world-class striker like, for example, England having Harry Kane or Norway having Erling Haaland, so someone will just guarantee goals upon goals. But yeah, so I thought in terms of Steve Clarke, I think he's done a tremendous job, and I think long may it continue. I hope he signed a new contract because his contract expires after this World Cup, and let's build a statue for hopefully Sir Steve Clarke.
Hmm.
In terms of the game itself, Tommy, I want to know your thoughts on the match. So tell me about your thoughts on the match and what it feels to be preparing for a major tournament in North America next summer.
So let me start off with obviously I'm very impressed with what Ireland have done as well. Just going to stem off from that. Very proud of what they've done. In England, they're getting through as well. So all the teams in that kind of area are going to the World Cup. And what's the game with the Scotland? He started out quite strong, got a goal quite quickly with McTominay. But I love this.
You want to touch on the goal itself, the technique and stuff like that?
Yeah. Before I do that, but I have to give credit to Denmark. They did put on a good game. It was a very back and forth game. It wasn't like one sided, so they played very good football. Unlucky that Scotland are just on the day were just better. But the goal, the technique, I would say that's outshone Ronaldo's Champions League technique because how high he got in the air. Do you see the stat? They took a picture of it and they measured it compared to Ronaldo's, and he was even higher than Ronaldo's leg.
Yeah,
And as well,
by quite considerable distance as well.
and you think Scotland, they've not got that natural ability. They're just hard-working players that just die for the badge. But the technique alone, you wouldn't even think that was Scotland that was playing. It's like a team possessed by Brazil or something, man. Because we were chasing down every ball, every blade of grass. You said, but I was mind blown because I couldn't believe what I witnessed. I was like, this must be like FIFA or something. This is not an accurate depiction of Scottish play. I was like, Scott McTominay, man, since he left Man United, he has moved up a high level, because he's been allowed to play in his natural position. Because Scotland started playing him in his natural position from the very beginning, and you've seen how many goals he was getting. And then he went to Napoli, and Napoli are playing him in the position he can thrive in. Man United were wanting him to defend because he's ginormous, he's muscly, he can tackle, but his game isn't about tackling. His game's about being in the final third and finishing. That is his game.
What I'm going to mention, sorry to cut you off a bit there, but Man United have got to be rude of themselves. They had him, homegrown player, and I think if you're a club, any club, you want your homegrown talent in amongst with foreign investment to improve, but you want the foreign players to come through. And he was an academy player, and like you say, he was kind of, for me as a Scotsman, I think obviously English people underrated him and diminished his quality because I think Scottish people can always see his quality when he puts on the national team jersey. And whatever he did for Scotland, Man United fans still didn't think it was good enough. And goes to Serie A and wins the Player of the Year in his first season. And like you say, you mentioned so many goals. Even the goal he won they said a title with in the last day.
It's a bicycle kick as well, isn't it?
But yeah, and the fact is, terrible players don't just turn great overnight. He's always been a good player, just obviously never played in the right position, never played in the right system, or he was always, because even when I watched Man United, when they weren't playing great, he'd come off the bench and always score goals. He was always a goal threat, but I think he was competing with someone like Bruno Fernandes, and that he's never going to start with a Bruno Fernandes. But that's what I'm saying. I think Man United will be ruining themselves because look at the players becoming and allowed to become.
Mm. And what your opinion on Ben Doak since he's this year is breaking into the first team?
I think he was an exciting player. He was obviously, we first seen him up in Scotland when he got his debut in an Old Firm game at the age of 16. That was back when Ange Postecoglou was manager. Celtic were trying everything they can to get him to sign a professional contract and stay and develop at Celtic. That never happened. He went down south, went to Liverpool. He played barely any games. Went out in a couple of loans to the Championship, and now he's signed for big money, 25 million, I think it was this summer, to Bournemouth. And he's developing. He's only 20 years old, still got a long way to go in terms of development. But what I've seen from him is the electric pace. He's fearless, terrific skill. But the only problem I would say is his end product is it's not always the best. But he's getting the right positions. He's all round to take on a man. And that's something you can't teach. That's something you can't harness. And he can always develop his crossing and his finishing. But once he does, he'll be a real asset for Scotland. And it's one thing that Scotland have always lacked in recent years, even especially under Steve Clarke, pace. And if you get someone running at you with pace, it's very difficult to defend against. And the one thing defenders don't want to be doing is running back towards their own goal. If you get someone that's willing to go inside, outside, and they give you that half yard, because he can go either way. He's a very good, talented player. I think if he pulled up a massive injury against Denmark, so hopefully it's not too serious injury, because he'll be, for me, one of the starters next summer.
I would definitely say, like what you touched on, is like he's got electric pace, and he's fearless. So see if like there's a thing, like if you just have pace and you're nervous, you're not going to get on the final third. You're not going to take on the man. You're going to pass it. You're not going to want to get the ball much. But because he's fearless, he doesn't care who he's up against. He'll drive at them, try his best. And as you can see in the recent times in wingers in this generation, there's a lot of unconfident wingers. So you say they don't like taking on the man, and they cut back and pass it in the middle. And like back in the day, everyone was taking on all their wing backs. The wing backs had a lot of work to do, but now wing backs have got enough time to come up because the wingers are not really challenging them much, and they can stay up. With Ben Doak, I can see that he is a reincarnation of one of the generational talents that's going to light the world on fire. Because I seen him when he was 16. He didn't really do much, but when you seen him on the ball, you could tell that he was talented. Like obviously, when you're 16, getting thrown into the big games and that, you're not going to have the finished end product at that time because you're nervous. It's getting 16 playing in one of the biggest games in the league, and that it's going to be, you're going to be scared and nervous a wee bit. But he still showed he had a little bit of fearlessness in him. And now Liverpool saw him, signed a contract with them, and then he went to Bournemouth for 25 million. It just shows that even when people don't rate the Scottish League, we do produce a lot of great talent, and they have went on to do bigger things. You know what I mean? Scotland are very good at picking up talent and selling it on to big profit. And I do feel like maybe, hopefully in the future, Ben Doak can come back to the Scottish Premier League when he's like more experienced, 26, 27, just like what Kieran Tierney did after he went to Arsenal, and he's now came back to his roots, his origins.
Yes, in terms of Ben Doak, I really think everything you said there. But I think let's go back to the game itself. I think for me, the game had everything. Obviously, with the penalty for Denmark, which
In the box.
I think it was a foul. I don't know if it was a penalty. In my opinion, even then soft foul. I don't think the referee even called it as a foul. VAR confirmed that they scored. Christensen got 2 yellow cards. First one was a complete yellow. He just wiped out the player. The second one, for me, is a bit soft. But Scotsman, you take it every day of the week. If the referee's willing to be card happy, that's his problem. And obviously, you can't overturn a second yellow card. You can overturn a red card. So, and as if you're already in a yellow, you shouldn't really be getting touched tight. And John McGinn is so super clever. And obviously, in terms of the goals as well, I think McTominay, for me, was the pick of the bunch in terms of the overall kick, set the tone, set the tempo, get the crowd going. And I loved his arrogance with the celebrations, like, I'm here, I'm the man. And that's his stage. And I think he has been the go-to man for Scotland in recent years. And then you've got Shankland, typical tap in, which obviously, as a striker myself, Love those type of goals.
Yes.
Goals a goal at the end of the day. But in terms of the other three finishes, Kieran Tierney's, which is extremely difficult because he's came on the ball and struck it first time, and he's not lashed
That's
at it.
true.
He's just caressed it. The technique is really, really good. And then obviously Denmark chasing the game towards the end, and then Schmeichel's well off his line.
Terrible pass. Terrible pass.
Kenny McLean's intercepted the pass. And then I just love the commentary for Stephen Thompson. He's saying shoot. And it reminds me of a bit like Charlie Adam when he scored for Stoke against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. But obviously the goal itself and then the limbs that pursued, and all the whole staff and technical run out the pitch and just celebrating and the whole crowd. The atmosphere itself was just incredible. And I just wish I was there at the game. Unfortunately, I'm in South Korea, you're in Vietnam, but watching the highlights and the TV, and it's just incredible. It's probably the best game that I've ever seen as a Scotland fan, and I just can't get enough of it, and I just can't wait for when next summer will hold. And obviously talking on next summer, Tommy. So what do you think our chances or our goals and aspirations should be in North America?
I think getting by the group stage is one of the things I would love, and anything they do more than that, I'll be like in awe. I'll be like, you've done so much already getting by that group stage, because I guarantee Scotland, we never get an easy group. We never get an easy group. Unlike England, England always get like the weakest teams in the I don't know how they always get the weakest teams in the group stages, but Scotland, we get like medium level, and then or we get like the group of death. So if we can get like maybe hopefully not too much of a difficult like kind of group, we could maybe qualify in second or come first. With the way we're playing like a team possessed. So we could go as far as we want. It's up to us. It's up to Scotland to perform every game. Whatever games that we perform in, we could beat any team. See, when I watched that game, I was thinking, there's no team that could handle that type of aura, that type of fearlessness, that type of structure that we had in that game. Yes, we did concede 2 goals. They were terrible 2 goals. The penalty and good finish from the guy, but the defending was a wee bit shaky in the middle in the box. But if we can shore up the back a wee bit more, maybe having the leader Scott McKenna, making it quite solid. I feel like there's no team I can think of, apart from maybe like Spain, maybe causing us a problem. But we beat Spain, remember? We beat Spain already. Lamine Yamal in the back pocket. All right. I feel we can go as far as we want. That's what I'm just going to say. As far as we want. What do you think?
Obviously, I think Scotland's aim is, like you say, I think it's just to escape the group and into the knockouts, because Scotland has never qualified for the knockout phase of any major tournament. And that's even with Dennis Law, King Kenny, and stuff like that. And the great Jock Stein and Sir Alex as managers of Scotland. And obviously the last ever World Cup we qualified was France '98, and our group was Brazil, who we lost 2-1 narrowly to a Tom Boyd own goal. So technically we rode Brazil close, and we drew 1-1 with Norway. Craig Bully was the last person to score for Scotland at the World Cup, and then so we drew with Norway, and then the last game we lost 3-0 to Morocco, which was a massive shock, and it put us out. But like I say, hopefully an easier group than that, because if I don't really want to be playing Brazil and Norway, especially Haaland, and it's mental. The fact is the full circle moment of football. Norway have never qualified for World Cup since 1988, and they've just qualified in the same year that Scotland have qualified again. So I hope that doesn't align the stars and we get drawn in the same group. I think Scotland, the sky's the limit. I'm not going to say we're going to win the World Cup, but I would just love to see us be competitive. I don't want to be seen as getting pumped like we did against Germany. I want us to be competitive. If we get beat narrowly, and well, that's all we can ask for. And obviously, it's going to be difficult in terms of conditions. Scotsmen don't really tan well, very fair-skinned. We get burnt very easily, and we don't really handle heat very well. But obviously, you've adapted to the climate of living there. But if you're only going there for like a month, it can be a bit challenging, especially in Mexico and America. Depends on what cities we'll be based in.
If you're playing in Texas,
and then Canada, which hopefully you think would be a bit cooler, but you never know. But for me, I think the sky's the limit. Steve Clarke with trust. I think the past experiences of the last 2 Euros have been not great, but
we've shown signs of greatness.
We show signs that we can compete, but it's just going forward. We need to score more goals and we need to be more solid at the back. But I think you mentioned the Spain result. We did beat Spain recently. The last team to beat Spain is Scotland, so you never know. But like you say, the Germany result, I think,
kind of shook us a wee bit.
The night, I think that'll massive learning experience. I think a result like that can actually galvanise the group. And Steve Clarke touched on it before the match against Denmark. The Ukraine result, where they lost the playoffs, and that got everyone motivated. And that can galvanise a group. And the togetherness in Scotland is unbelievable. And I think Scotland, we've got to believe, and we've just got to enjoy it. And I think, for me, getting to the World Cup is enjoyable because the fact is, watch the World Cups in neutral. It's the greatest international competition, and to see your home country being there representing you, it just brings a tear to your eye. And the fact is, it's the first time in our obviously 2002 in 1888, but I mean, you were born in 1888, I was born 96. But like you say, we don't remember that. So we're now adults. We want to hopefully be this a recurring theme where Scotland continue to qualify for major tournaments. And I think we can do well. I think we can qualify for knockout stages, and if you get a lucky draw, then who knows?
Just let me touch on the previous tournaments, like you said, the Euros and that we didn't show signs of really that great. But I think the reason that we were not that great is because we were relying too much on Scott McTominay. Have you seen, like, we were literally no scoring without Scott McTominay? If he had like a tough game against a tough defence, we were getting pressurised, we were getting pushed. And if Scott McTominay didn't score, we weren't scoring. And we were like, Shea Adams, I'm telling you, Shea Adams, I don't know how he's still in a Scotland shirt. I like Lyndon Dykes. He does offer something, not a goal scorer, but he offers something in the match. Shea Adams offers nothing. But we don't have a great roster of players that we can replace him with. That's the reason he's still in the Scotland squad. I mean, I think maybe we do have like decent.
We don't have a great variety, but I don't think you can criticise Shea Adams. I think he's a good player, but I don't think he's a striker per se in terms of a reliable clinical striker. Because you mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned the Greece game, but it's some really guilty opportunities. I think it's his first touch and his decision making. He panics at times. He's not really cool head in front of goal. But like you see, he's playing at a decent level in Serie A and he's performing admirably. So you never know. But I think for me, Shankland should be leading the line for Scotland. Shankland or Dykes, or even potentially both. You never know. Steve Clarke can alternate between a 5 at the back and a 4-3-3 or a 4-4-2. So yeah, we've got a good variety of options. I think that could be discussed later on down the line. But I think now let's just celebrate Scotland qualifying World Cup for the first time since 1998. And I think we'll end the podcast there. I think we've discussed in terms of individual players, the manager, what Scotland can do going forward, hopefully qualify major tournaments, and obviously the match itself, where we discuss some of the probably three of the best goals I've seen in a single match. Hard to choose from, but I think my personal one is Tommy's. I don't know what yours was, Tommy.
Kieran Tierney's. I think because of the difficulty of like hitting a first time shot and then whipping it round two defenders, like that was impressive. And Castle Spike was a decorated goalkeeper. He's got so much experience, and he does get to get round and makes a lot of epic saves. So like obviously my favourite goal was Kieran Tierney. He's a defender, and for doing that as a defender, obviously Kenny McLean, great. McTominay scores goals like that all the time in Italy. So like for Kieran Tierney to score a goal like that and help us get the win, that for me is just momentum. It's like that is an ideal goal. That's basically the winning goal. It was 3-2 at that time, wasn't it? We made it 3-2.
Yeah, that was the winning goal, yeah. So basically you're saying you're choosing Tierney because of the technique, the fact that the defender, and obviously the importance of the goal in terms of it's the match winner.
Yeah, it just reminded me of Pascal, you know what I mean? first time finish.
Okay. And that's all today from Football Chuggu. Make sure to check out YouTube, website, and all other available streaming platforms where this podcast will be uploaded. And you can see my beautiful face and Tommy's beautiful face as well. Or if you want to just listen in the old format where you can just listen to our voices, I appreciate the support, and like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, see you later.
See you later.